for once. My gauge showed 3.5 inches. Oh, since mine showed 3.5 inches. Yeah, yeah. You know, huh? I finally beat you. I said, see, you always want to be the last, so you can beat everybody. So, but for years I've heard the saying, "Come in, no good deed goes unpunished," and could never really, for a long time I couldn't figure what did that really mean. Doing a good deed and it never goes unpunished. Why would you be punished for doing something good? Well, that was right. Then it finally sunk into my thick skull. Have you ever done a good deed or done what was right thing, but suffered the consequences? I think we all have. Yes, we all have. We probably all have, and it may be something as trivial as holding the door open for someone, and they just pass through and not even look forward to anything. No, thank you. I have been guilty of saying you're welcome. Yeah, yeah, 10 or 15 coming in. Yeah, that's happened to us. Somebody opened the door and they just keep coming. But some of you may have had a close friend, and they were going down the wrong path of destruction. In other words, as a friend, you confided with them, and encouraged them to turn around before their life may be ruined. Rather than them coming to their senses and thanking you, they turn against you and spread false rumors about you. That's happened. It may not have happened to you, but it's happened. As we look at today's lesson, we see Joseph doing the right thing and suffers the consequences. Between last Sunday's lesson and today's, we have chapter 38. We were kind of mentioning that this morning. Now, I'm not going to get into it really, but you can read it yourself. Read chapter 38. But it's about Judah and his daughter-in-law Tamar and how she deceived him into committing adultery with her. And that's kind of contrast, I think, between Joseph's brother Judah and Joseph himself. But I wonder how would God choose a person. I wonder when I read this and see even the other brothers of Joseph. I've wondered how would God choose such a person as Judah as one of the 12 tribes of Israel. As a matter of fact, we may wonder how God chose the 10 other brothers, Joseph excluded, to become the tribes of Israel. And they all had some sort of past. And well, we looked, like Sunday's lesson, they threw him in a cistern, a pit. But God can use them, and that's God's business. And He knew what He's doing, and that's the only thing it's we should be concerned about. God knows what He's doing, and He chose these brothers to be the 12 tribes of Israel, and that settles it. Yes. But anyway, let's go to our lesson text now and read. And someone read now chapter 39, verses 7 through 10.
After some time, his master's wife was longingly at Joseph, who said, "Sleep with me." He refused. "Look," he said to his master's wife, "with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in his house, and he put all that he owns under my authority. No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do this immense evil, and how could I sin against God?" Although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her.
I want to back up first. I want to look at verses 1 through 6, because I believe it sets the scene for this lesson text. Joseph says had been taken down to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, an Egyptian officer, by the Ishmaelites. Now, he was a highly trusted official of Pharaoh, and had real great standings with him. And the Hebrew, I thought this strange. The Hebrew translation of the name Potiphar can mean eunuch. So they would be totally devoted to the king. Now, this might explain why his wife acted as she did. I don't know. That's just speculation. But of course, this is all assumption. Now, the Lord was with Joseph and became very successful. As seeing the Lord was with Joseph, Potiphar eventually placed him in charge or overseer of all his affairs. In other words, it says verse 6, and back up, said, that means he had charge of everything. His organization organized everything, his finances, everything. And I think that was so Potiphar could uh, take care of his duties. Because, like I said, he was a high-ranking official, had people under him, captain of the guards, yes. So Joseph, you might say, relieved him of the responsibilities of his home and places like that, so he could devote all of his time to his job, their position. Verse 6 reads, Potiphar, left everything he owned in Joseph's charge. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. That's the New American Standard. In today's terminology, some would say Joseph was a hunk. Or I heard women say that he's a hunk. But Scripture doesn't indicate Joseph went to the gym every day and worked out. It was natural. I was thinking when I had a friend years ago that he's very well built, muscular, never worked out. Used to make me so mad. I could have gone to the gym. We worked out at school and never was as muscular as him. And why couldn't I be like that? But in my younger days, we had this saying, called back my younger, believe it or not, I had what they call the 6-pack. Well, it's the 12-pack now. Or a cold case. But anyway, it says, well, there's a keg. Yeah, I've got a keg now. Yeah. But it says in Genesis 29:17, it says, Rachel, Joseph's mother, was very beautiful. This may be where Joseph got his looks. We don't know. In Esther 2:7 and Daniel 1:3-2 reads, pleasing appearance led them special success to foreign officials in Babylon and Persia. Now, after some time, verse 7 suggests there was a period of time between when chapter 39 took place. Joseph was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. That's Genesis 37:2. He was 30 when Pharaoh promoted him. Genesis 41:46. And then Joseph was in prison for 2 years before his promotion in Genesis 41:1. Therefore, Joseph was in Potiphar's house for 11 years. It seems like you think, well, he was just there for a short time. But he was there 11 years in Potiphar's house. It took 11 years for the full measure of God's blessing to be accomplished in Joseph's life. Sometimes we get, we want to get in a hurry. 11 years seems like a long time, but many think if advancement is from God, it must come quickly. We think, well, boy, I've been called to do this or that. Well, right now, I want it to happen. It takes time. You take some, that's called to the ministry. It takes time. There's study and schooling, or it should be, and so it takes time. So, mm-hmm. Yeah. Lowest form of life you can have. Sure. Place you've never seen, one of the most metropolitan, fast-paced places on the face of the earth. Sure. Undoubtedly, Potiphar went to a slave market. Yes. So, I would think about that. How he started just right there, how he could easily become business. That's right. Yes. Obviously, he worked hard. Even though it was the worst situation possible, like he was betrayed by his family, left going to a place you don't even know. Yeah. Well, and I remember several years ago, I heard a sermon by Andy Stanley, Charles Stanley's son, and it was about Joseph, and he went through every period of Joseph's life, and the point was he never complained to God, and that was pointed out. That's one of the few in Scripture that at one time or another said, well, why am I doing this and all this? But he pointed out in his sermon that Joseph never complained. Yes. Sure. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. But Mm-hmm.
You don't have it like that.
Yeah. I can't even remember what I dreamed half the time. Probably that's good. Yeah. But like I said, sometimes we're impatient. We want things to come quickly. And sometimes this is the case. But normally, God allows good things to develop slowly. Sometimes, God knows how much to place on us because He knows what we can handle and what we can't. And so it came about that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph and said, "Lie with me." I don't believe this was just a spur of the moment. She desired Joseph, and I believe she lusted after Joseph for some time and planned and all this and waited for the right situation. But she was just waiting for the right moment. Note scripture does not name her. I think Moses didn't name her for a reason. She is insignificant, really. And Moses wrote Genesis, so I believe that, like I said, she wasn't important enough to name. But I believe, and like I said, it was for a reason. I believe if Potiphar was a eunuch, she may have felt neglected. This may not have been the first time she probably approached someone. I would think so. It probably wasn't the first time. She had a reputation. I think we'll see later on that by Potiphar's actions that she probably did have a reputation. But for whatever reason, there was no excuse for her advances. She said, "Lie with me." This was bold and strong temptation to Joseph. It reminds us that when we face strong temptations, others have also faced the same. Satan wants us to think our temptation is unique, that no other person could understand what we're going through in a particular temptation. But there's no temptation that has overtaken us except what is common among people. If you read 1 Corinthians 10:13.
There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able. And with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able.
That's something I think we need to keep in our heart and mind. Whether we enter into temptation, we need to remind ourselves God's not going to allow us to be tempted above what we can overcome with God. And to think that God's going to give me a way out of this. And sometimes, well, I just couldn't help it. It was just the temptation was too strong. But I think we remind ourselves of this verse that God will show us a way out. And He's not doing it just, I think, to have fun. He's not doing that to say, well, I'm going to tempt him just to see if he's going to get out of it or turn. But no, God provides a way. But day after day, she enticed and encouraged Joseph to lie with her. Even though Joseph knew it was wrong and could do great harm, it was a sin against God. That part, when we commit sin, Joseph was saying it, you know, I can't sin against my Potiphar and all this, but when we get right down to it, it's a sin against God. And that's what Joseph knew. And what he said, I cannot do this. I mean, even though it would, I show mistrust in my owner, Potiphar, and when you get down to it, it's a sin against God. And remember, even though this was before the Ten Commandments, in his heart, Joseph knew it was wrong. We don't need the Ten Commandments to know sin is sin. We don't need to or commit tempted with sin. We don't, the Ten Commandments are there for us. But it's in our heart and mind, our conscience, that sin is sin. And we don't have to go back to the commandments to be reminded that we know that God placed it in our hearts. What would have happened if Joseph would have finally given in? I've wondered that. I might as well, he might be saying, well, I might as well go ahead and have relations with her. She's not going to leave me alone until I do. Back down in that hole, exactly. Yeah, if he did, exactly. Yes, that was a catch-22. You're right. And he was in a dilemma. And I don't think there was any choice for him to make. He knew the right choice. And in his heart, he knew the right thing. But, how many would be tempted? Would say, well, I might as well give in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Be excited. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Right. I was thinking, thank God that He's made me so dumb and naive at times. I know Lil and I had gone to East Texas, and went to one of the state parks, and I got out to pay there, and this young lady, I do remember she was nice looking, but she said, "Oh, I like them boots." I said, "I like them. Show me them boots." And I said, "I just and got in the car, and Lil was laughing. She said, "What's funny?" He said, "She was flirting with you." No, she wasn't. She just wanted to see my boots. So yeah, thank God I was naive and dumb. Well, she couldn't see her where she was sitting. Yeah, right. I knew she was sitting there too. But that's probably happened to us, Father. But yeah, many times I thank God. I thank you for making me dumb and naive. Ignorance is bliss. Yes, yes. Naive, what some say, naive. Okay, where was it? Like I said, he could have gone the other way. Like there was no one there, no one in the house. It would have been easy to do. He could have been like Abraham, his great grandfather, when Sarah told him to have relations with her slave Hagar. You told me to. You know, Joseph remembered his responsibility to his owner and reminded her, "You are his wife." End of story. I had a good friend. Well, she worked in the judge's office, and when she was this particular man in town that got a divorce, and he was kept well, he sent her flowers and wanted to date her, and I always was proud of her. She said, "You're still married. I'm not going out with you because you're still married." And not until after, and so I thought, well, that made me proud of her. That some would have said, well, they're separated and they're going through the divorce. It's not final yet. So, well, what's the difference? The big deal. But I told her, I'm proud of you. She said, I'm not going with you until the divorce is final. So, but anyway, someone read now verses 11 through 16. Yes, she's a good liar. Yes. I believe Joseph made a mistake by entering the house when no one but Potiphar's wife was in the house. Maybe he didn't realize it. I don't know. Maybe she got everybody else, cleared the house. But uh, I don't know. Put yourself in Joseph's place here. Like I said, we never should let ourselves get into a compromising situation. And just especially like pastors, both Stan and Steve, you counsel someone. You always should have someone there, especially a woman. You should always have someone there with you when you counsel them, and it's a protection for both. And it's the same. And I know there's times that, and maybe some people think, well, that's silly. But I've come up here and maybe practiced a song with someone, a lady. I always brought Luella with me because for one thing, people might drive by and see my car and this other lady's car parked at the church, and that's on one there. Yeah, the appearance of evil. So I always thought it good, and like I said, maybe I was overcautious, but I had Luella come with me, and not because I felt like something might happen, but it's just that uh, put yourself in that situation. And
I remember,
mhm.
don't want to get in trouble, don't go with trouble.
Exactly.
I remember 2007.
Mhm. Yep. And I didn't listen sometimes. Yes, right. Yes. And sometimes we've all kind of got ourselves in a situation, walked into a situation where now how am I going to get out of this? Yes, here's the cap. Uh, and I imagine Joseph may have thought the same thing when he walked in the house. He said, "Oh boy, this don't look right." And but it says, "Oh, sure she did. Sure she had it planned. She'd been after him for some time. He'd been there 11 years, so we don't know how long that went on. That she was after him and conniving and deceitful and like I said, she just waited for the perfect situation. Like I said, I think she had him clear the house, and uh, and I'm wondering these other servants and everything, they knew what was going on. I think they knew her. She may approach some of them. We don't know. And but in verse 10 it states, and I never really thought about this, but it can be read more than one way. It says, "He did not heed her or be with her," which it can, I think, can be interpreted. He would not enter the house when there was no one there but Potiphar's wife. It said that he would not be with her. He would not heed her come in, and he would not be with her when there was no one else in the house. I think she set a trap for him. Um, she saw her opportunity and attempted to take advantage of it. She had been persistent in getting him in bed. She seized the perfect opportunity. Everyone was gone. Potiphar was away, probably at work, serving the king. Is that something? Oh, the speaker? Okay. Yeah, I thought, is it raining again? Yeah. We might ought to get ready to enter the ark here. Well, I believe when Joseph realized he was alone, he had then attempted to leave. And she grabbed his garment, trying to persuade him to stay. Joseph resisted this tremendous, I can't say it, tremendous moment of temptation when he ran outside. Joseph did what we're all supposed to do when faced with this kind of situation. Said he fled and ran. Read 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee also youthful lust. I don't mean that's not speaking to the youth, the young. Flee. It don't make everyone say flee youthful lust. And it's we see it every day. We see it on TV. We see it on the internet, and it's so Satan can work our minds so well that say we men see a scantily dressed woman on the internet. Well, that can lead to the next step, and the next, and the next, if we're not careful to flee that lust. Same way with women. I don't exclude women, and it's the same thing. And we see this hunk on TV or anything. He's so. Uh, I always remember a story. Luella, she denies it, but I know better. It was years ago. We were in San Angelo, and we went to what I think it was remember Piccadilly or one is a uh, or what was the other Luby's. We went to Luby's, and we were all standing in line. And there was a guy in front of us, a young man, well dressed, real nice looking. I mean, I have to admit, he was real nice looking. She couldn't keep her eyes off of him. I said something to her. I said, "You couldn't keep your eyes." No, I didn't. I said, "I said I was watching." I said, "Yeah." I know one time I was working out of town and we'd bought a car, and I'd talked to the banker and and about getting the loan set up. And I said, "Well, I'm having fixed to leave out of town." She said, "Well, just have your wife come down and she can sign the papers." So she went down and signed. I talked to her on the phone. I said, I said, did you get the paper? She said, don't ever send me down there to talk to him again. He was so good looking. I said, yeah, not as good looking as me. But we get into situations that we God gives us an escape, and we can walk, or we may have to run, and to give us an escape to situations. And Satan's conniving. He'll get us into some of these situations where we do have to walk away or to run, like you said. And where was I, Butch? What was it? I got sidetracked. But she was waiting for the right moment. I may be going over this again, but I believe Moses, like I said, he deliberately omitted her name. We've gone through 16, haven't we? Verses, yeah, a dime a dozen. Okay, you read 2 Timothy 2:22. But it says, flee also youthful lust. If we are not actually running towards sin, we have a tendency, or at least linger in its presence. That's where we have to be careful. Keep your hand. Though we don't play with temptation, we don't play with sin, because it'll get you every time. Satan sets a trap. Remember what he did for Eve and Adam and Eve. He set a trap. Oh, God he just wants y'all to be as smart as us. Yeah. You'll be as smart as God if you eat of this. But and he lures us, tries to lure us and tempt us. But Adam and Eve could have walked away, and uh, God would allow them. He allowed them the power and will to walk away from that. And but it goes back again. That woman you gave me. And but if we are not actually running towards sin, we have a tendency to at least linger in its presence. But we are commanded to do the only safe thing: run away from these lusts of the flesh, and run as fast as you can. I've said that before, but I've told my children, I said, there's times you have to turn and walk away. There's times you have to turn and run. And because uh, no one's uh, protected from lust and sin and so forth. We've all faced it at one time or another. But the King James Version says in Genesis 39:12, he left the garment in her hand and fled and got him out. Joseph got him out. No one else was going to get him out. I thought that's a good statement. No one else was going to come in there and grab Joseph by the nape of the neck and pull him out. Joseph had to get out on his own. God provides a way of escape, as read in 1 Corinthians 10:13. But you have to take the way out. That's the key, isn't it? God provides the way, but we've got to take that way. Exactly. Yes. Right. Rational. Oh, I can handle this. Yeah, don't want to hurt your feelings. And we get to where think we're bulletproof. And I can handle this. I'm not going to cave into that temptation. But after Joseph had ran from the house, I can picture her gazing at Joe's garment, saying to herself, "I'll get him. I guess he thinks I'm not pretty. I'm not desirable. Well, I'll show him." She immediately called the men of the house and said, "Look, my husband has brought this low-life, second-class Hebrew into my house, and look what happened." The Hebrews, they were looked down upon by the Egyptians. So he waited until everyone was gone, and he came in the house and made advances toward me. When I grabbed his garment to fend him off, I screamed, and he ran out of the house, leaving his garment. Does that sound like a likely story? Oh, she's covering herself, isn't she? I didn't know why she called the men of the house other than to have others support her story. Where did Joseph run to? It's a good question. I don't know where. He didn't run off. Far away from her, yes. Probably out in the field somewhere, yes. But he didn't try to run away. Uh, did he run and hide? I believe he waited until Potiphar would come home and discover his fate. What's going to happen? Whatever happens, I'm ready to accept it. And but and like I said, everything's a lie that Potiphar's wife said. She was protecting herself, so to speak. But someone read now verses 17 through 21.
Then she told him the same story. The Hebrew slave who brought to us came to make a for me. But when I screamed for help, he left his garment beside me and ran outside. When his master heard the story his wife told him, these are things the slave did to me. He was furious and had him thrown into prison where the king's prisoners were confined. But Joseph was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him. He granted him favor with the prison warden.
Mm. You know, I can just see Potiphar's wife when Potiphar returned home. She's in his face. I can see her right now in his face saying, that dirty second-class Hebrew you brought into my house. Look what he has done. Does it remind you of someone else, that woman you gave me? She went on to say, that Hebrew waited around until you were gone, and when everyone was out of the house, came in and tried to seduce me. You know, I'm thinking Joseph had many chances prior to this. But says, when I began screaming, he got scared and ran out of the house, leaving his cloak. When did she scream? After he had left. She's telling her husband, when he grabbed me and tried to seduce me, I started screaming. And he broke and run. And the cloak that was the incriminating piece. You know, in trials, evidence is needed to convict. So she had the evidence. There he came in, tried to seduce me. I screamed. He broke and ran. I grabbed his cloak, or he dropped his cloak, and that's all the evidence she needed. She didn't scream until, like I said, Joseph fled the house. She's covering every track here, isn't she? Looking at verse 19, there could be some speculation, and this has been discussed. When Potiphar heard his wife's words, his anger burned. At who? The thought occurred to me, was Potiphar angry with Joseph or with his wife? I think his wife. I think he knew her. Yeah, because I believe as we finish out the lesson, he may have been angry, like I said, as a wife. There's nothing else Potiphar could do. He had to save face and protect his wife against gossip. He could have sentenced Joseph to death. He had the power to do it. No one would have asked. That was the law in Egypt. He could have sentenced him to death, but he chose to put him in prison. Well, some say he was over that prison. So Joseph went from privilege to his father's house, to the pit his brothers threw him into, to being property in the slave market, to the privilege of managing Potiphar's house, to the principal stand against temptation, to the perjury of false accusation, to the prison of Pharaoh. That's quite a circle, isn't it? We can see mercy in this, because if Potiphar had believed his wife, he certainly would have put Joseph to death. We can see the injustice of this because Joseph suffered from someone else's sin. As Christians, we remember someone who perfectly resisted all temptation, who, as he stood for righteousness, was stripped of his garments, and who was then punished for the sins of others. We see that Jesus is the hope of all who fell under temptation. We can see God's hand in all of this. All of this moves God's story forward, putting Joseph in place where he can save his family and the whole world from coming famine, and prepare a place for them to live with him. Here's a statement I like Charles Spurgeon makes, that he felt it a cruel thing to be under such a slander, to suffer for his innocence, and a young man so pure, so chaste, must have felt it to be sharper than a whip of scorpions to be accused as he was. Yet he sat down in the gloom of his cell. The Lord was with him. There's a line in a song I remember that says he was there all the time. You know, Scripture says in these Scriptures, God was with him. As we see of the trials and temptations of Joseph, God was with him all the time. And he is with us all the time. Any comments? Got a few minutes, friend.
He didn't want to be there, but he told us.
Well, of course.
I don't want to be in this place.
Yeah.
It wasn't pleasant, but God knew that they don't enter
Yes. I mean, I said, God, get me out of this. and all the time, like I said, all through his life, the stages of his life, like I said, God was with him.
I believe the prison time was what trained him most for the prime minister.
Sure. He wasn't ready.
Right.
He wasn't ready. God was preparing. I think you mentioned too, I've wondered if he ever run across Potiphar's wife after he was the second in command.
I always picture Potiphar saying to his wife, "I hope your accusations are true. I'm reporting to him in the morning."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I always think about it. Yeah, I think he did the same thing he did with his brothers. What you meant for bad, God meant for good. And I believe
Exactly. God meant for good.
Like to sing that stare.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
You ain't so good looking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think too many times we flirt with temptation.
Sure.
And
Yes.
they don't think about consequences.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to think about consequences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think we, like I said, flirt with temptation. We may go to places we know we shouldn't go, but I can handle it. I can handle that temptation. Yeah. Yeah. And that happens. Yes. And God will. I think sometimes I've gotten in situations I'm not going to get get too careful, but I've gotten in situations I think God did grab me by the neck and pull me out. Instead, I was too dumb to to run, and God took care of it. But didn't click right away. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I've told our kids, like, don't put yourself, you probably shouldn't be going to that place.
Yeah.
Oh, I can handle it. Don't put yourself.
Oh yeah, I can handle it.
Maybe you
Mm-hmm.
can, but why put yourself there?
Yeah.
With the music.
Oh gosh.
They just listen.
And I know there was a situation. I hope Louis is not watching, but it's before we married. But yeah, from friends and I walked into a place, as a restaurant, and when I walked in, I thought, we're in the wrong place. And before we knew it, we were surrounded by some men, and they said, we need to ask y'all to leave now. And I said, is right now soon enough? So I didn't argue. I said, I'll be glad to. You don't have to share any of your. Yeah. Any other comments? If not, Butch, would you dismiss us, please?
Our Heavenly Father, we come to you today. Thank you so much for this day. Thank you for your son, Jesus. And Father, thanks for always giving us a pathway, Father, to get out of these positions. But mostly, thank you for the path you gave us for our salvation, Father, through eternity, through your son, Jesus. Father, as we go into our service this morning, we hold our pastor up before you and just ask you to give him the word pleasing you. And if there's one here today that doesn't know you, I pray that they find him today. Let everything we do praise, honor, glory, and we put in Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.